Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Ram Sankirtanam ki jai. Hare Krishna. So today we'll be looking at Bhagavatam 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 2nd verse. Very grateful to all devotees for giving me. Huh? Now is it okay, Mataji? Girija Mataji?
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Very grateful to all devotees for giving me an opportunity to speak for my own purification on this verse. I'd like to share the screen. Nahi asya varshmana pumsa parimna sarva yogina Vishrutau Shruta Devasya Muri Tripyanti Meshava Nahyasya Varshmana Pumsa Parimna Sarva Yogina Vishruta Shruta Devasya Muri Tapyanti Meshava Nahyasya Varshmana Pumsa Parimna Sarva Yogina Vishrutau Shruta Devasya Muri Tripyanti Meshava. What word meanings? Na, not. He, indeed. Asya, about him. Varshmana, the greatest. Pumsam, among men. Varshmana, the foremost. Sarva, all. Yoginam, of yogis. Vishrutau, in hearing. Shrutadevasya, master of the Vedas. Puri, repeatedly. Tripyanti, as stated. Me, may, my. Asava, senses. Translation and purport by Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. Shaunaka continued. There is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature, a yogi, than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. Okay. So in this 25th chapter, the context here is Shaunak Rishi, almost like from first verse of this chapter to like 6th or 7th verse, he glorifies the Kapil Dev. So Kardam Muni has taken to the renounced order. He has left home, and now Shaunak Rishi will specifically glorify Kapil Dev's position here for around 6-7 verses. After that, the conversation between Kapil Dev and Devahuti will begin. So here Shaunak Rishi is basically addressing the Supreme Lord coming in the form of Kapil Dev, and in relation to him is actually speaking these qualities. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that no one can be equal to or greater than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Vedas also. Eko Bhavanam Yo Vidadati Kama. He is the supreme living entity and is supplying the necessities of all other living entities. Thus, all other living entities, both Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, are subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. The same concept is confirmed here. Nahi asya varshmana pumsam. Amongst the living entities, no one can surpass the Supreme Person because no one is richer, more famous, stronger, more beautiful, wiser, or more renounced than he. These qualifications make him the Supreme Godhead, the cause of all causes. Yogis are very proud of performing wonderful feats, but no one can compare to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is associated with the Supreme Lord is accepted as a first-class yogi. Devotees may not be as powerful as the Supreme Lord, but by constant association with the Lord, they become as good as the Lord himself. Sometimes the devotees act more powerfully than the Lord. Of course, that is the Lord's concession. Also used here is the word Varimna, meaning the most worshipful of all yogis. To hear from Krishna is the real pleasure of the senses. Therefore, he is known as Govinda, for by his words, by his teachings, by his instruction, by everything connected with him, he enlivens the senses. Whatever he instructs is from the transcendental platform, and his instructions, being absolute, are non-different from him. Hearing from Krishna or his expansion or plenary expansion like Kapila is very pleasing to the senses. Bhagavad Gita can be read or heard many times, but because it gives a great pleasure, the more one reads Bhagavad Gita, the more he gets the appetite to read and understand it. And each time he gets a new enlightenment, that is the nature of the transcendental message. Similarly, we find that transcendental happiness in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The more we hear and chant the glories of the Lord, the more we become happy. Okay. Just one second. Hare Krishna. So here in this Sankhya section of the Bhagavatam, which is very, very crucial, very, very important, especially for devotees. Our acharyas, especially when they establish the Siddhanta of our whole of our Sampradaya, they look at this section and the Uddhav Gita section as such. So specifically, this is very, very crucial to understand and to relate to the concepts and study them as such. Even Bhagavad Gita, if you happen to see, it begins that second chapter, 11th verse. Asosyan anvasosastam pragyavadam sabhasase. Okay. Sochanti pandita. So there also Krishna is basically beginning with a basic sense of Sankhya as such. Okay. So to study this subject very deeply and to study this subject very thoroughly is very, very crucial. Okay. I'll read two sections, one from Teachings of Lord Kapila and one more from the second canto, where purports, one where what Prabhupada writes, especially in relation to this, verbatim we'll be able to see over there. Okay. Only a person who actually understands the working of this material nature and and those people who are afflicted by the material energy very thoroughly, he'll be able to get a thorough understanding as to what it means to act above the bodily platform. Okay. Someone who has not understood the Sankhya very properly, he'll not be able to understand what does it mean to act above the bodily platform. Okay. I'll just read what Prabhupada writes in Teachings of Lord Kapila, very important section. Yeah. Now, what is Sankhya? Insofar as Sankhya deals with the elemental categories or principles of the physical universe, Sankhya is what Western scholars generally refer to as metaphysics. The term Sankhya literally means to count. Even in that song we sing, Sankhya Nama, Sankhya Purvaka Nama Gana Natibi. Okay? So Sankhya means to count. This name is used because Sankhya philosophy enumerates principles of cosmic evolution by rational analysis. The etymological meaning of the word Sankhya is that which explains very lucidly by analysis of material elements. Philosophically, this term is used because the Sankhya system expounds analytical knowledge that enables one to distinguish between matter and spirit. This understanding culminates in bhakti, devotion for service. This understanding culminates in bhakti, devotion for and service to the Supreme. It may be said, therefore, that Sankhya and Bhakti form two aspects of the same process. Bhakti being the ultimate goal or ultimate aspect of Sankhya. So here Prabhupada is clarifying or explaining what is the meaning of this Sankhya as such. So in the material world, when materialistic scientists and all, when they study the subject of Sankhya, or as they refer to as physics, okay, so they consider only the material elements as such. In fact, they don't even consider the material elements in totality. Okay, because if you look at Sankhya, when we were looking at this canto, so we were understanding the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego, all the three elements as such. How ego is transforming by the mode of passion, goodness, ignorance, and manifesting in the form of subtle body as such. Okay, so they have some understanding of the subtle body, not even completely for that matter. Okay? So in that sense, they only study the gross material elements, not even the subtle material elements. Okay, but the Sankhya which is studied in Bhagavatam, or as per the Bhagavad Dharma specifically, that also deals with the soul and the super soul proper, okay, and the Supreme Lord also. Okay, and hence, a complete understanding, a complete holistic understanding of the whole structure of the material universe can be understood only on the path of bhakti. Okay, and especially in the materialistic understanding, a person doesn't get a complete understanding as such. That is why Prabhupada used to say, by material research, one comes to a better and better understanding of the relative truth. Okay, so they have no complete understanding or not even a complete clue of what is the absolute truth for that matter. Okay, so Prabhupada, especially in relation to the importance of this heading, Prabhupada brings about very, very crucial understandings for those aspiring complete perfection on the path of bhakti. Okay, Prabhupada equates, we'll just read that one section. Yeah, this is the second canto, 7th chapter, 53rd verse. Some pseudo devotees think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear about his activities with the gopis or about his pastimes like lifting the Govardhan hill, and they have nothing to do with the Lord's plenary expansions as the Purusha avatars and their pastimes of creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material worlds. Okay? But a pure devotee knows that there is no difference between the Lord's Ras Leela pastimes and his pastimes of creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world. Rather, okay, so here Prabhupada is clarifying and emphasizing something very crucial. Rather, the descriptions of such activities of the Lord as those performed by the Purusha avatars are specifically meant for persons who are in the clutches of the external energy. Topics like the Ras Leela are meant for the liberated souls and not for the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls, therefore, must hear with appreciation and devotion the Lord's pastimes in relationship with the external energy. And hearing such pastimes is as good as hearing the Ras Leela in the liberated stage. I'll just read this line again. The conditioned soul, therefore, must hear with appreciation and devotion the Lord's pastime in relation with the external energy. And hearing such pastimes is as good as hearing the Ras Leela in the liberated stage. A conditioned soul should not imitate the activities of the liberated souls. Okay, Lord Sri Chaitanya never indulged in hearing in the Ras Leela with ordinary men. Okay, so here many devotees are over here. Okay, so in case we just get transported to that place where Krishna is having his Ras Leela, okay, the consciousness which we'll be having over there, the same consciousness is actually what is as of now, at this point of time, what is being experienced. Okay, Prabhupada is clarifying in the purport over there. Okay, the study of this section is as good as experiencing the Ras Leela itself. Okay? It is a very, very crucial section that is described in the Bhagavatam over here. Okay? One more thing, Prabhupada, here it's clarifying. If you read, if I just emphasize on the initial aspect. Okay? Some pseudo devotees think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear about his activities with the gopis or his pastimes like lifting the Govardhan hill. Okay, so as you read further the purport, Prabhupada is clarifying that these sections are even more crucial than the pastimes of not only Ras Leela for that matter, even the lifting of the Govardhan hill also. So specifically in the purport, if you happen to see, Prabhupada brings about as to what is emphasized in the translation as to how much the Lord, he is the best of the yogis, as he is the worshipable, he is the supreme maintainer as such. Time and again, Prabhupada is to quote this: Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Jo Bahunam Vidadati Kama. Okay? So once in one class, one devotee asked the speaker, okay, so why is it that all of you shave your head and leave only this behind as such here? Okay? So then that speaker quoted this verse, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Jo Bahunam Vidadati Kama. So what is the meaning of that verse? Very simple. Nityo Nityanam. Okay? So the Supreme Lord is eternal, we are also eternal. Chetanas Chetananam. He is Chetan Vastu, we are also Chetan Vastu for that matter. Okay, so we are also living, he is also living. Okay, but nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko jo bahunam vidadati kaman. Okay, so the difference over there is, okay, he is the supreme maintainer and everyone else as such is maintained by him. Okay? So if you look at the whole of the cosmos, practically so many things are there. Okay, the modern scientific understanding actually tries to get the whole of the cosmos by the, what is it, the technical word used is gray matter. Okay, by 100 or 200 grams gray matter that is there in their skull. With that, they try to comprehend the whole of the creation. With that, they try to comprehend the whole of the creation, but it's almost impossible. Even to comprehend what will be the size of the whole of the cosmos, that itself is impossible. Forget the aspect of going ahead and understanding it as such. Okay, so only on the path of bhakti it is said, Brahmanda Brahmite kon bhagyavan jeev Guru Krishna Prasade pai bhakti lata bija as such. Okay, so Brahmanda Brahmite kon bhagyavan jeev. So those people, it's only by fortune. Okay, it's only by fortune as such that one comes to the path of bhakti and gets a clear perspective of this understanding of Sankhya also. Okay, if not, the whole of the material creation is just stuck with the materialistic understanding of the cosmos as such. And the material energy is so strong that one gets bound to the material energy and keeps on undergoing the cycle of birth and death, repeatedly for that matter, millions and millions and millions of times. Okay? So Brahmanda Brahmite kon bhagyavana jeev. Only those people who are actually fortunate, they can actually get a understanding or fixity in the understanding of this cosmos and then proceed on the path of bhakti. If you see, in the description of Kali Yuga, which comes in the first canto of Bhagavatam, Prayan Alpayusha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Upadrata. Okay. So those who come to the path of bhakti, Bhagyavana Jeev, they are considered to be extremely fortunate. But Kali Yuga is going to be so strong. Prayan Alpayusha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya. Okay. So Bhagya, that fortune itself is Manda. Okay, so those who are fortunate, that number is very, very less. Even, especially in the material world, practically everybody is unfortunate. Prabhupada used to give the example of this President Nixon. Okay, so this is a very interesting story. He was there in power as the president of the United States of America. Okay? So, being the president of the United States of America, once it so happened, as his term was about to get over and the next elections were about to begin. So what he did was very, very interesting. Okay, so he got some 5 or 6 spies. Okay, so these spies, he sent them to the opposition's I think headquarters or building also. Okay, so these spies used to study, in what way they are planning the election, in what way they will be, strategizing the elections, etc., etc. Okay, so as per the American law, this was considered to be illegal. You can't spy on the opposite party as per the election rules and things like that. Okay, but he never cared about it, and somehow or the other, he won that elections. Okay, as per because he knew the trick of the opposite party, so he won that election. Okay. And as soon as he won the election, something happened. One of those spies, either he didn't pay him properly or he had some kind of a tip with him. So one of those spies, he actually leaked the information that he was appointed by Nixon to monitor the opposite election party as such. Okay. And as soon as the information was leaked, everyone started to ask, how is it that you can do such a thing during the election as such? Then President Nixon, he made a very classic statement. The president as such, has all rights everywhere. Okay, so he can get to know whatever the opposite party are doing, and as the president, I have all right to do it. Okay, but after that, he was so much, tortured because of making such a outright comment that he had right to do anything and everything, because of which, he was pulled down from his post. Okay. Now, someone might be thinking that he became the president, then he is pulled down from the post, etc., etc. So he's so unfortunate as such. But in the material world, practically everybody is unfortunate. Prabhupada used to quote this Bengali quotation. The English goes something like this. Okay? So when the wet cow dung sees the dry cow dung getting burnt, okay, so the wet cow dung feels extremely happy. Okay, looking at the dry cow dung getting completely burnt as such. But it's just a matter of time that the wet cow dung will also become dry and then it is also burnt. Okay. So in the material world, practically, there are some people who look a little fortunate. Maybe they have young bodies, or they have good health, or they have a better financial position, etc., etc. But that is just the wet cow dung that is there existing. Okay. With the passage of time, when material nature acts on each and everyone, then finally either the body fails or finances fail, etc., etc. Then everybody is just roasted by the material energy. Okay. Everybody just gets roasted by the material energy as such. Okay. So, so it's very, very crucial that we come to very firm understanding of the position of the Supreme Lord and our position also in the material world. Okay. So, as I was telling, in the material world, practically everybody is unfortunate. The misfortune or this unfortunate position is because we are bound and we are pushed by the laws of material nature. So the laws of material nature are extremely strong, and one is practically pushed by these laws to just take repeated birth and death, birth and death, birth and death again and again. Okay, so that is why we are considered to be extremely unfortunate. Okay, and if one, as Bhagavad Gita says 4.9, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vetti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti Arjuna. Okay, one who takes the anxiety, or one who gets this fortune of actually understanding the position of the Supreme Lord and his Janma and Karma, at that point of time, he becomes extremely fortunate, because that becomes his source, or that becomes his medium to go out of the material world as such. Okay. Now, understanding the Supreme Lord is not such an easy thing. Okay, it's not such a cheap thing as such. Okay, it's very, very simple. Okay, one has to just hear the message of the Supreme Lord coming in parampara. Evam parampara praptamim rajariso viju sakalane hamata yoga nashta parantapa. Okay, but the science as such was broken. But if one just takes the anxiety to actually hear the message coming in parampara, then completely in relation to the Supreme Lord, everything gets awakened in the heart of the living entity, and then that becomes his last birth as such. Okay, so the Supreme Lord basically comes to display a part, or a trailer of his activities that he has in the spiritual world. Okay, and when the living entity is exposed to that, and when he gets thrilled, and when he wants that, then naturally, with the mercy that is coming through the pure devotees, he graduates and slowly goes back to Godhead. Okay, so the Supreme Lord coming into this material world and we being in the material world, they are not the same. There is a lot of difference as such. Okay. Once it so happened that that Jawaharlal Nehru happens to visit the mental asylum. Okay, so he goes into the mental asylum as such, and as he's entering the mental asylum, and he meets one person. Okay, and of all the other people who were completely, mentally very, very disturbed, this person looked a little sober as such. A little sober. Okay, so he went and asked him. He was talking to him and all. Then finally, the person who was that patient over there, he happened to ask Jawaharlal Nehru. Okay, so who are you? What is your position as such? Okay, and Jawaharlal Nehru as such happened to tell him that I'm the Prime Minister of this country as such. And this mental person as such, I happened to started to laugh like anything. It became like a very hilarious thing for him as to how he can be the Prime Minister. That is what people were thinking. Okay. Then the Nehru asked, why is it you are laughing? Why are you laughing so loudly? I just told you, my position. I'm the Prime Minister as such. Okay. Then he told Jawaharlal Nehru, before I came over here, I also used to tell the same thing as such. And I'm also the Prime Minister. Okay. So unfortunately, the living entity also think the Supreme Lord is coming into this material world, and he is also one amongst us. Okay, but that is not the fact. Okay, and only those people who are fortunate on the path of devotion, they get this proper revelation and realization as to their fortunate position in service to the Supreme Lord. Okay, so by the simple process of hearing and chanting, practically everything gets revealed. Okay, so in this third canto of Bhagavatam, here the beginning, Shaunak Rishi is actually glorifying the position of Lord Kapila. Okay, we just read the translation again. There is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. Okay. In relation to the senses, one very beautiful verse, Devavati quotes ahead, 7th or 8th verse, I think. she is requesting Lord Kapil Dev. Nirvinna nitaram bhuman asat indriya tarshanat ena sambhava manena prapannandam tamaprabho. Okay. So prapannandam tamaprabho. Okay. So that living entity is stuck in that habits of ignorance as such. Okay. And asat indriya tarshanat. Okay. So every living entity as such has asat indriyas and sat indriyas. Okay. So bhakti acts as if like the digestive fire. Okay. If you see the fire of digestion, when the food is put into the stomach as such, okay, so the digestion fire does two jobs. Okay. It absorbs the nutrients and the essential things that the food has and nourishes that individual as such. Okay. It absorbs the nutrition and all the necessary things from the food and nourishes that individual. And at the same time, whatever is futile or whatever is dirty as such is thrown out of the system. Okay. The same way, bhakti acts like that digestive fire and it destroys the asat indriyas and awakens the sat indriyas. Okay. It destroys the asat indriyas that are there and awakens the sat indriyas to their full potency. Okay. So, Prabhupada is to say, someone, let's say, puts a cloth on the tongue and is trying to taste on rasgulla or something like that, so he'll not be able to feel anything for that matter. Okay. The same way, the material senses that we currently have, that is, they are actually the covering on the spiritual senses. Okay. And they are bringing about a misconception of this material world. There is something tasty in this material world, there is something dirty in this material world, etc., etc. Okay. Practically everything in the material world is dirty only in that sense. No, that which seems good, is wet stool, and that which seems bad is the dry stool. Okay. So material happiness is basically dirt, and material what is it? Material distress is also the same dirt as such. So material distress is a more of a fortunate position as per Queen Kunti for advancement on the path of spirituality. Okay. So Prabhupada uses this particular word. He calls it as the forlorn condition. Okay. Those living entities who are put in a forlorn condition, they are very, very fortunate compared to those who are having even a pious birth. Okay. A pious birth as such makes people very much relaxed as such. Okay. But those people who are put in a forlorn condition, they easily are pushed and they take to very, very strong practice when they are exposed on the path of devotion. Okay. That is why Indians as such, if you tell them, chant Hare Krishna, they say, Krishna is my neighbor only. Okay. Or Krishna is that person who sells a pan over there in that shop as such. Okay. So all kind of notorious understanding they have on the, about the path of bhakti. Okay. So one devotee was telling when Prabhupada went to the West, when Prabhupada was in the West, okay, so he told all the people over there, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So we should chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and go back to Godhead. Okay. And all the devotees there, they said, yes, Swamiji. Okay. Then they started to take the path of devotion very seriously. Then they progressed like anything. Okay. And Prabhupada came to India, he told the Indians, okay, that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. We should chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and go back to Godhead. Okay. And everybody in India said, but Swamiji. Okay. Okay. So this pious birth as such brings a person to a very miserable condition if he is not fortunate enough to get exposed to the path of bhakti very properly as such. Okay. So I'll just summarize what all we discussed as such. Initially, we looked at the emphasis or the importance that our acharyas have actually given to this section. And Krishna himself basically begins with this section when he starts off Bhagavad Gita. He is condemning Arjuna and he starts off with the understanding of the soul and body in the second chapter, if you happen to see. Okay, just after the conversation over there, where Arjuna is submitting himself as the disciple to the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada as such is very, very clear. He is telling that the understanding of this Sankhya or getting to know the subject very thoroughly is as good as participating in the Ras Lila itself. Okay? Is as good as participating in the Ras Lila. Then Prabhupada is emphasizing that this subject or this topic or this subject or the concepts that are getting discussed in this topic, they are more crucial than Govardhan Lila or Ras Lila, especially for the conditioned soul. Ras Lila and these kind of topics, they are meant for the liberated souls who are there as such. Okay. And materialists as such are miserable because they only stick to the material elements, gross material elements. They don't even have a proper understanding of the subtle material elements as such. Okay, even mind and all, they have some petty puny understandings which they bring about in the form of psychology, psychiatry, etc., etc., but not even a thorough understanding as it is described in the Bhagavatam. Okay? So it's only by fortune as such, that the subject actually happens to get revealed. And we are very, very fortunate getting exposed to this section of Bhagavatam and studying it. Okay? So if we make it a proper point to actually study it very properly, that is why as Shaunak Rishi is beginning with the glorification of the position of Kapil Dev. Okay? And even when Lord Brahma happens to meet Devahuti, there also is actually glorifying Kapil Dev, that he'll be the person who will teach the subject of Sankhya, and he'll bring you glory, and his fame will spread far and wide as such. Okay? The speaker as such is glorified so that the subject as such happens to be very, very relevant and appreciative to the audience as such. Okay? Thank you so much for your patient hearing. So if there are any questions or so, I'll try to answer from my part.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I've got one question. You said that reading the pastimes of Lord Krishna, that should not be done by conditioned souls. But most of us who have come to Krishna consciousness, we have actually started with the pastimes of Krishna first. We read the Krishna book, and after that only we started on Bhagavatam, first, second, third cantos and things like that. So what do you have to say for that?
Yeah, so Prabhupada is clarifying over there in that specific purport as such, that the conditioned souls are specifically meant to get a very firm understanding of this Sankhya aspect. The pastimes of the Lord are well relished by those people who have a firm fixity about the temporary nature of this material world. Generally, all of us, at least I can say for myself, when our body is hurt, or somebody as such is going some kind of difficulty, he is feeling some kind of a sickness, or COVID, so many deaths are happening in the material world. So we start to think like what is happening as such. Okay? Because we still feel a deep sense of relevance, or we identify with the material world as such. Okay, so these pastimes of the Lord are completely transcendental as such, completely transcendental, which in completeness can be understood by a person who has the proper realization of this Sankhya concept. Okay, and to begin bhakti as such, anything is okay. People might get a deep sense of attraction because of the pastimes of the Lord, or especially Indians as such. They are naturally exposed to the position of the Supreme Lord, and sorry, not the position of the Supreme Lord. Something they have a lot of piety. Natural piety is there because of birth, or because of a lot of punya activities and all that are naturally done in this country. At least maybe like till now things are still quite dharmic, at least in India in that sense. Okay, and if you go to the West, people got attracted to Prabhupada because of various other reasons also. Okay, like Prabhupada when he used to drink water, he used to hold his lota like this. Okay, so the water never used to fall like this as such. He never used to hold it like this. So he used to hold, the water used to come like this. So some devotees got attracted to that, etc., etc. Okay, so it's not a disqualification if someone is attracted to the pastimes of the Lord, but in totality, in completeness, we understand the pastimes of the Lord when we have a firm fixity about the Sankhya aspect. Okay, if you have to ask yourself, like if you see Gadadhar Pandit, when he is actually reading the pastimes of the Lord, okay, he is crying such profuse tears that the whole of Bhagavatam only gets washed away. Okay? So that is actually relishing the pastimes of the Lord. That doesn't happen with us because we have not yet gained firm fixity in Sankhya as such. So actual relish of the pastimes of the Lord is that position where a person's the symptoms of bhava and prema, what you actually read in NOD, they are completely manifest over there as such. Okay, one comes to that stage, provided he is fixed in these concepts of Sankhya that are mentioned in 2nd and 3rd canto, 11th canto. And specifically, our acharyas have given great importance to the 3rd and the 11th canto. They establish a siddhanta based on the verses and the concept that are discussed in these two sections. Did I answer your question, Mataji?
Thank you.
Thank you.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु.
Yes, Prabhu.
हम सुबह प्रभु.
Yes, Prabhu.
प्रभु, सबसे पहले तो मैं आपको बहुत बहुत थैंक्स देना चाहूंगा. सो मच नाइस क्लास यू हैव डन. मेरा एक प्रश्न है प्रभु, जो इसका सेकंड पैराग्राफ में एक सेंटेंस लिखा है कि जिसमें बता रहे हैं कि अगर कोई भगवान से संबंध रखता है तो प्रथम कोटि का योगी है, वो भगवान के समान शक्तिशाली हो जाता है। बट इसमें एक सेंटेंस लिखा, कभी कभी तो वो भगवान से भी अधिक शक्तिशाली हो जाता है। तो कोई शक्ति अपने शक्तिमान से ज्यादा कैसे शक्तिशाली हो जाएगा? नॉट अंडरस्टूड प्रभु, इसको थोड़ा बताएंगे कुछ?
ये भगवान की कृपा से ही होता है। आप अगर रामायण को देखेंगे तो हनुमान जी कूद के जा रहे हैं भारत से लंका की ओर, लेकिन भगवान राम को ब्रिज की जरूरत पड़ रही है। ये क्यों हुआ? भगवान राम चाहते थे कि उनका भक्त का गुणगान ज्यादा हो उनसे।
नाइस एग्जांपल प्रभु।
Like this, many examples are there. Prabhupada used to say, no, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went around India and spread the whole holy name as such, but I went around the whole world. Okay, and Hanuman as such jumped across the ocean and went to Lanka, but Lord Ram as such required a bridge as such. Okay? So the Lord is more eager to have his devotees glorified than himself also. So by the mercy of the Lord, the devotee becomes more potent than the Supreme Lord also.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
Even in the Bhagavatam first canto we see, and just complete project. Even in the Bhagavatam first canto we happen to see the pastime of Bhishma Dev. So there Krishna as such is not addressing the bewilderment that Yudhishthira Maharaj was undergoing. He deliberately directed him to Bhishma and had Bhishma answer the questions to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Okay, Krishna as such is the Supreme Lord, is the Supreme Absolute Truth. He could have easily answered whatever is there as such. But he wanted Bhishma's position to be more glorified as such. And Bhishma is also beginning. Don't think he is an ordinary person standing over here and all. He is the Supreme Absolute Truth as such. Yes,
thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
So I didn't give a nice class. I tried my best. But by your prayer, something worthy came out as such. Thank you, Subhabu. Yes, Sanatan.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the nice class. I had a question when you were giving this example of wet and dry cow dung. Recently we were reading something on the general science or the material science, and it was claiming that in the next 20 to 30 years, we might come into a situation where they will stop, or they will be able to reduce the degrading of the cells. So this will give what we call as a prolonged lifestyle, or maybe what material science claims is death might be something which is optional. While I know the side effects and blah 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 of this, I'm just thinking that will something like an anti-aging or a non-degrading of cells cause our understanding of Sankhya to be heavily affected? The fundamentals of our Vedic knowledge, how should we understand if something like this comes into picture?
Yeah, one thing we have to have a clear-cut idea that modern science as such has been given. Prabhupada used to call them post-dated checks. Okay, post-dated checks. It's like 1 crore rupees check given to a person, and the date is like 31st February as such. Completely hypothetical. 31st February will never come. Even in million years it will never come. 29 Feb might come. 31st Feb will never come. Okay. Same as scientists as such give these propositions. And Prabhupada also, if you happen to take many issues, he has given many optional understanding. And I don't know what to call it exactly. If you happen to see moon landing also, Prabhupada says we didn't go, we did go, we might have gone as such. Okay. Even if we take all these three into consideration, if you have to take the scientific advancement in totality, okay, let's say people are going to moon and coming back, or people are able to live long, etc., they will never be able to overcome the three kleshas. Let's say a person is living for 100 years. Okay, let's say he lives for 1,000,000 years also. We have had so many example of yogis. You take our Shaunak Rishi coming in the Bhagavatam. He is living for thousands and thousands of years doing meditation underwater, but he's still inflicted by eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And once he comes out of water, then he enjoys material world like anything. Okay, that is what they want to do, right? Let's say they live for millions of years. They want to enjoy the material world. Still, he is only feeling miserable as such. Okay. So we have to understand, materialistic fellows are third-class fellows. So in English, there is a saying, experience is a good teacher, okay? But they don't complete it. The complete understanding of the complete statement of that is, experience is a good teacher and a fool learns no other way. Okay, experience is a good teacher, and who learns no other way. So those people, who want to remain in the material world, who want to venture into these kind of things and all, okay, let's say they, even if they succeed for that matter, still it's a failure. Still it's a failure. We have classic example of Hiranyakashipu. Okay, he had a very long life. Practically all devatas and all were under his foot only. But just one small boy, Prahlad, as such, he refused to chant Om Hiranyakashipaya Namaha. Because of that, he got thoroughly frustrated. The whole of the world was chanting, one small boy refused to chant, because of which he became thoroughly frustrated for that matter. Okay. Same way, these are those people on the negative side. Same way, if you look at Indradev, he is on the positive material side as such. He is the typical example of what these scientists want to become. Very long life, very large amount of material enjoyment, etc., etc. Okay, but even for him also, whole of the world as such is offering all yajnas, and one insignificant village of Vrindavan, where didn't offer the yajna, and he also became thoroughly frustrated and disappointed as such. Okay, so even if whatever they are doing, even if that ends up as a success, still they'll be miserable as such. Did I answer your question, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Sankhya and Bhakti Yoga are not essentially different. If so, why should we understand that unless we have a deep understanding of Sankhya, we cannot progress in Bhakti? Yeah, very good question. Why to understand Sankhya also? Yeah, so specifically to say, we have faith that there's something called material happiness as such. Okay, we have faith there is something called as material happiness. Okay. So unless we come to a thorough understanding of the temporary nature of this material world, so this understanding of Sankhya or study of Sankhya is very, very crucial. Okay? If not, that person will be just stuck in duality. Okay? Unfortunately, if you happen to see our society, people after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of practice, they still ask, no, Prabhuji, no, pizza and burger is also prasadam or no, Prabhuji, they ask as such. Okay. See, when these are put on the plate in front of somebody, he is looking at it with only bhogavritti. Okay, he is not looking at it as prasad. He is not looking at it as the mercy of the Lord. Okay, so he still has faith that the mind and senses can still give him a titillation, still give him a sense of material happiness, etc., etc. Okay, but one who is firmly fixed in Sankhya. Okay, whether you give him what do you say, nicely cooked these kind of foodstuffs, or you give him something very, very simple as such, he understands, this is coming from the Supreme Lord only. Okay, this has to be tasty for that matter. Krishna has tasted in means, this has to be tasty. That is the vision of a person who's fixed in this firm understanding of Sankhya. Temporary nature of the material world, understanding of the material elements. This 25th chapter, 26th chapter as such thoroughly clarifies what are the material elements, how the living entity is stuck in those material elements, etc., etc. Okay. Bhakti in and of itself is completely sufficient, in the sense what, just by hearing the pastimes of the Lord, by chanting the names of the Lord, no person can go back home, back to Godhead with that only as such. Okay, but mostly it will not happen, because many conditioned souls as such, repeatedly they'll be whetting their consciousness with sense gratification. Okay? If a person can be completely aloof as such, stay in the forest, eat only roots and shoots, drink little water a day, and just keep chanting the holy names of the Lord, which is practically impossible as such. In this age of Kali Yuga, it will be impossible to find such people. Very, very few will be there. Extremely rare as such. That is why we are very fortunate to be part of ISKCON than other whatever paths of Bhakti or Vaishnavism is there, because Prabhupada as such, he has given us a lifestyle, in terms of book distribution, preaching, morning program, evening study of scriptures, staying in the association of devotees. He has given us a lifestyle by which gradually we get a firm fixity in Sankhya and awakening of these rasas, which are mentioned in the pastimes of the Lord. Both will happen very, very smoothly as such. We just need to be very safe in the structure of ISKCON and keep going on as such.
Thank you, Prabhuji, so much for nicely and perfectly answering this. Thank you.
I don't know whether perfect or not. I tried my best.
I got Prabhuji. Actually, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Rosh, want to add or comment? So devotees can. So kindly requesting some devotees would like to give some feedback or comment as such.
Stop the live stream.
Okay, one
Will you
minute.
stop the live stream?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Bol.